When I was in middle school, the hardest thing that everyone else seemed to be going through was puberty, except for me. The hardest thing that I was going through was losing two of my aunts and my uncle to drug addiction. At the time that this happened, I was only about 14 or so I didn't really understand drug addiction or its depths, nor did I really understand my feelings or their depths. So my initial response to the situation was to be angry. I was angry at my aunts and my uncle for suffering from drug addiction. I was angry at myself as well as the rest of my family for feeling like we could have done more to help. I was just extremely angry at the whole situation. And it wasn't until I was a little bit older, probably about 16 or 17, that my heart started to soften and I really started to be a little bit more open-minded to the idea that drug addiction is both a choice and a disease. Initially, I had thought that drug addiction was a choice, a stupid, selfish choice that my family members had made with absolutely no regards for the rest of our family or our feelings, and nothing anybody said or did was going to even slightly change my opinion on that. It wasn't until about halfway through my sophomore year of high school that I started researching drug addiction and what it is and how to deal with it and all of that. It was around this time that I stumbled upon a TED Talk on YouTube titled "Everything You Think You Know About Addiction Is Wrong." This TED Talk features a man named Johann Hari, and he covers all of his findings on drug addiction and how he believes it actually affects people and their brains. In this video, Hari suggests that drug addiction perhaps has more to do with a person's surroundings than it does their brain, due to data collected from a study called Rat Park done by a man named Bruce Alexander. Rat Park was a form of research done on drug addiction at the time, way back in the 70s, that suggested that drug addiction had chemical hooks that and then rewired your brain to make you addicted. Bruce Alexander took a look at this study and stated that there was something wrong with it because there were variables being left out. In the original Rat Park study, you were to take an individual rat and place it in a cage with two water bottles, one laced with drugs and one not. And you were supposed to see which one the rat would go to. Now, if you think about it, if you're giving a rat straight water and drug-laced water with absolutely no environmental stimulation, the thing that they're going to go to more often than not is the drug-laced water. Alexander takes a look at this research and realizes this and says, hey, I think we should redo the study, but put the rat in a cage with friends and food and all of that. So Bruce Alexander revamps Rat Park, and he takes the original study with the individual rat, but he also compares it to a study that he's doing simultaneously, where he takes a rat and he puts it in a larger cage full of friends and food and toys and anything that a rat could want to live off of. And he compares the data at the time that he gets from this study to that of the Vietnam War, because at the time most of America's troops were addicted to heroin. And he finds that his data correlates with that of the soldiers. Alexander finds that his data correlates because in 1971, over 15% of our American troops in Vietnam were addicted to heroin. So when all of our soldiers came back from war, all of the United States was so worried that we were just going to have our streets littered with a bunch of druggy soldiers. However, when the Vietnam War ended and all of our soldiers came back, only 5% of our American soldiers continued using. This, among many other examples, are some of the biggest reasons that Americans are now fighting the war on drugs. Another reason would be how costly the war on drugs actually is. In 1971, President Nixon declared the war on drugs. From that point in history to present day, the United States has spent on average the amount of about $51 billion annually on the preventative measures for the war on drugs. That's not including an additional $7 billion spent annually on prisoners being housed in penitentiaries and state prisons and all of that. This money, as well as the additional $7 billion and all of that, if the war on drugs were to cease, could then be diverted into other areas such as education or road repair, and etc. In conclusion, um, drug addiction is extremely looked down upon in this country. Drug addiction is also one of the biggest killers in our country. 1 in every 3 Americans know someone or is suffering from drug addiction themselves.